So this is a moment that a lot of people have been waiting for. Jessica, you're going to do the introduction. Leslie, if you're listening, could you please turn on your mic and your camera? Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, there it is, the man. Wow, this is so exciting. Okay, we have with us now the incredible Leslie Bocskor, B-O-C-S-K-O-R. Leslie, I don't know if I'm slaughtering it, Bocskor.
Good enough, good enough.
For some reason, I have the most, I can say some of these, some other names, but it's like, oh man. Anyhow, regardless of that, love this man. He's incredible. He's the executive chairman of Electrum Partners. Leslie's far-reaching banking and entrepreneurial experience, his unique style is also bolstered with his knowledge of any cannabis vertical. So you have like the all-in-one kind of package. So from like domestic and international policy to finding your niche, investing opportunities, from super critical extraction to ERP solutions, seed to sale, and to the entourage effect of strategic integration. I mean, Leslie has become one of the most influential people in the cannabis space. He's been guiding policy and reform. He has been our keynote industry expert, State of the Union speaker with CANNA World. I mean, it's always a pleasure. And the amount of the wealth of information, the plethora of information that he is able to provide is incredible. So without further ado, I know that usually our times with you always end up running longer, so I'm not going to take up any more time ranting and raving about you. I'm going to just turn it on over, and Leslie, give us the State of the Union of Cannabis.
Thank you so much. I've got to say once again, Jessica, Denise, everybody here, it's such a great thing you're doing to be able to get people together, present this information, and today, of all days, is extraordinarily significant. So first off, and I'll get to that, first off, a little bit of my background, a little bit of my story. As regards the cannabis and hemp industry, an anecdote, I smoked pot for the first time when I was 15 years old. I was at the bus stop. My friends were telling me before we went to high school, you got to try this. For weeks, I said no. Then eventually I gave in, and it was great. I taught myself to snap my fingers on my left hand that day for the first time. And I continued to be fond of it. Although when I went to the financial industry and started my career in finance, I chose not to indulge. I actually was one of those people who didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't use coffee, tried not to take aspirin for a while. I was one of the first people in finance to work as an investment banker and expert on the internet and new media back in the mid to late 90s. And in that space, I got very fortunate to see the birth of an industry and to see a tremendous amount of value creation. When I first started looking at them, there was, $500 million in total public market value. By the time we got to the year 2000, 5 years later, 4 years later, it was $2.8 trillion in public market value. That was in year $2000. I then went on to look at other industries that I thought were going to be very significant in their change and in the opportunity. To that end, I was looking at the casino and gaming industry. I came out to Las Vegas to do some research on that. And because where else do you go but Las Vegas if you're going to research the casino industry? And when I got here, I decided to move here for quality of life reasons after living in New York my entire life. And let me say one thing also. Anybody who has any questions regarding anything that I'm going to talk about, please start, letting us know immediately. The quicker I go to Q&A and I can deliver value and get people involved in the conversation, the better it is for everybody, and the more I'll enjoy it, and I think the better it'll be for all of us. So just let me know or let us know if you have any specific questions as regards what I'm about to say. So I did that, and then while I was here and I decided to move here, I saw right away that cannabis was treated very differently in the western part of the country than it was where I was from. Medical marijuana was a real thing, and I started to do some research. Well, my research showed me that the size of the industry, even in the black market back then, in 2010, the UN and Rand Corp said the size of the black market for cannabis in the United States was 150% the size of all professional sports in the country. It was between $42 and $50 billion. And the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NHL at that time were only about $35 billion. And that data point was so significant to me that when we saw Colorado and Washington adopt adult use, I decided to focus on this industry to the exclusion of everything else that I was doing. And I have not looked back since. I ended up developing a business and a practice with my team where we focus on the nexus of policy, business issues, and political and social cultural realities as regards the hemp and cannabis industry, and what that means in terms of how to make good decisions around operating businesses, creating businesses, and deploying capital into them. So that's me. Now, I'm going to take a perspective on what's going on and what we're going to talk about, what I'm going to talk about today. First, I'm going to do a little bit of a level set of where we were, what it is that got us to where we are today. So the history of the cannabis plant was very much tied in with human civilization. In the 1800s, pharmacies and doctors would have cannabis-based therapies on their shelves and at their disposal all the time. It was a big part of our culture. Hemp was a huge part of our culture. I've actually had people say that the word canvas comes from the word cannabis, and that may or may not be true. I believe it is, and it was a huge component of numerous parts of our economy. In the 30s, we saw the establishment of the Marijuana Tax Act, and that was really the beginning of the end of, for a period of time, of the cannabis plant, hemp, which is cannabis, as part of our economy. Then the Single Convention Treaty of 1961 at the UN further moved it into an area where the cannabis plant, hemp, and any type of medicinal use, any type of adult use were off the table globally. It was stated in that any plant of the genus cannabis was treated as though it made it impossible to do business with anything that had to do with that plant. That's the Single Convention Treaty of 1961. That was architected, largely drafted by the same person who drafted the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 in the U.S., Harry Anslinger, and it was really he looked at it as his life's work, we're told. And so that took the plant out of the global community from a business and cultural, social perspective, medicinal perspective in every way, up until the changes that started here in the U.S. And the biggest one, once again, is 2012. Now, a little bit of sort of background. Why does that matter? Why does the hemp plant matter? And I'm going to focus on hemp first. Cannabis, and adult use and medicinal use and pharma, that's one thing. I happen to think that the effect that hemp will have on our global economy, socially and economically, is far more significant than we're going to even see from the global legal cannabis industry, which I think will be in the hundreds of billions of dollars over the years to come. I think that the hemp-based industries will be substantial, will be a multiple of that. So why? Well, for example, hemp has more cellulose than wood. It is a better source of feedstock for paper. The hemp fibers resist decomposition, and they don't yellow with age. The fibers are longer. There's greater tensile strength, higher tear resistance in pulp made for paper based upon the hemp plant. And the uses for it are manifold: fibers, plastics, paper, and more, construction materials, industrial uses, etc. Cannabis. Where are we today with hemp and cannabis? Well, as of today, hemp was legalized in 2018 in the Farm Bill of 2018. And the definition of hemp, and once again, keep in mind that cannabis is the plant. Hemp is a designation by our government for any cannabis plant that is 0.3% or less THC by weight, or any derivative. The Farm Bill of 2018 created that distinction. Cannabis is still illegal federally. Now let's talk about that for a minute. As of today, 15 states have fully legalized the adult use of cannabis. If you look at the population of those states, it's nearly 112 million people. If you look at the states that are on deck, it adds another 65 million that will likely in the next 12 to 18 or 24 months legalize. By the time we get to 2022, we're going to have over half of the country. We have a third now. We'll have half the country at least with adult use legalized. And to give some context, if you look at the states that are fully illegal today, the population, the total population is only 27 million people. So less than a tenth of the population, 10%, has a policy in place that is the same as the federal policy. It just doesn't make any sense. So what we're going to be seeing, which I'll get to, is very significant, and today is an important day as it regards that for obvious reasons. Now let's talk about this globally as well. There are only really 2 countries that have legalized cannabis on a national basis still, and that's Canada and Uruguay. There are nuances where Georgia and the country of Georgia, South Africa, the Netherlands, and many other countries that have decriminalized, like Trinidad and Tobago, Russia, Switzerland, and many more. But the truth of the matter is, we haven't even seen the beginning of legalization internationally. We're about to see a major step taken when Mexico continues its legalization effort, which we believe is going to be within the next 90 days. We'll see Mexico with a legal framework for adult use cannabis on a national basis, a country of 130 million people. And that is going to lead to more dominoes falling around the world like they have here in the US. So where we have been is the up until now, where we are, we're at this tipping point. And today, with the announcement that the presidential administration is changing, and with the position that the incoming administration has stated they're going to take, with New Jersey, Arizona, and Montana, and South Dakota, I think, all legalizing adult use in the last election, and with the numbers that I just stated, we're facing a national descheduling and treating cannabis like alcohol and tobacco within, in all likelihood, the next 12 months. What that means is the amount of value that's going to be created, the amount of money that's going to be out there, and the number of businesses that are going to be created in every aspect of this industry will be extraordinary. Globally, it will start to change as the U.S., which architected the war on drugs and the illegal status of cannabis and hemp globally. Now the U.S. will be the country that will likely, once again, influence the rest of the world to change its position to a re-legalization of hemp and cannabis internationally. Let's look at that as 2 different areas. Cannabis, which I look at the adult use market, I look at pharmaceuticals and supplements, as well as the ancillary industry. The supplement industry globally is $360 billion and growing. There are people that believe for a period of time we will see the cannabis and cannabis plant-based supplements that will probably be 20% of that industry on an international basis, $70 billion in total revenues from ancillary, supplements and nutraceuticals based upon the cannabis plant, based upon hemp and cannabis. Pharmaceuticals. Cannabis is changing the narrative around drug development in the United States and internationally. The fact that we have this plant that in such a pure state that is able to avoid all processing and still provide value, or minimal processing, and still provide the type of therapeutic value that it has been shown for epilepsy and Crohn's disease and so many more things, is changing the narrative around drug development. And now many other naturally occurring plants and compounds are being looked at. And so the pharmaceutical value, the value of pharmaceuticals based upon the cannabis plant will likely be in the $100 billion or more over the coming years. And so, once again, a massive opportunity. Because of the economics of this, we're seeing innovation being driven by it in agriculture. We're seeing new technologies developed to facilitate indoor agriculture for the cannabis plant for adult use markets. That innovation is going to spill over into food production and more. We're going to see products developed and technologies and solutions developed as a result of the economics of what's going on in the cannabis industry that are going to spill over into many other industries. Now, let me explain why that is with a little bit that shows the differentiation here that's very important to understand. This is not like anything else we've seen in business. Nothing I have looked at can frame where we are today. You can't look at any other industry and understand how to navigate this if you haven't been in it. Why is that? Well, we've never seen a transition from a black market to a regulated market internationally like we're seeing now with this. When we saw the United States make alcohol illegal, we were an island alone in the world that made alcohol illegal. We were the only country, and it only stayed illegal for a short period of time. This transition of a black market to a regulated market and everything that it means is cannabis, once again, is a massively different business environment. And what I mean by that is, when people have been in the black market and established the pricing in the black market, that was based upon the risks that the black market presented. That was based upon having to worry about everything that comes along with getting your business taken away, getting your personal assets taken away, violence and more, because the black market risks were enormous. So the pricing was very high to provide the type of reward that those risks commanded. Well, when we transition into a regulated market, the price doesn't come down. It's not as though as soon as it only costs $35 an ounce to produce a pound of cannabis, that people are going to try to sell at retail for $70 a pound. No, the price stays the same. That is the price. That's the mark that's been set. The black market pricing is still there, and as a result, the margins that are available for a well-run business are extraordinary, which is why we see so many people trying to get into it. That creates confusion, as well as the fact that cross-border trade, even as the markets become legal, is still murky. For example, people say, well, hemp is legal in the United States. That means all these CBD products are legal. That is not true in the current environment. The FDA gave guidance that said work and process hemp extract that gets above 0.3% THC makes those products and the process of making them illegal. And so there is still a lot of confusion, and there are a lot of issues regarding being in this industry that no one would understand if they didn't spend the time looking at it. And so that is one of the things, as investors, as operators, as producers that we need to pay attention to. This is not like other industries, and it will be decades before it is completely normalized. Decades. It's not going to happen in a year. It's not going to happen in 2 years. It's not going to happen in 3. Hemp was made legal 2 years ago. Hemp companies still can't get merchant services. They still have a problem getting banking, and they still have issues regarding the things that I just mentioned. And there isn't really a way to understand it, but the risks are real. Deep knowledge is key. And so if you are going to be doing this, the thing you need to be doing, which I'll get back to again, is take your time, be patient, be diligent, and make sure you understand what it is you're looking at. When we look at hemp, we see that hemp is a gigantic opportunity. And what I mean by this is the global plastics industry is 359 million metric tons produced per year, $1.1 trillion, if not more, in revenue. The global paper industry, 300 million metric tons produced per year globally. The average U.S. consumer uses 700 pounds of paper per year. And hemp would be a far lower impact on the environment, and less expensive and better source of producing both of those. The global fiber industry, cotton and more, 110 million metric tons per year, $700 billion in value. So hemp presents an opportunity to, from a business perspective, it is the most disruptive single event and the most disruptive aspect to affect those industries in their history ever. Nothing has happened that has been as significant to disrupt and change those industries as the reintroduction of the hemp plant to them. Now, that it's not going to be immediate, because we've had 8 decades of technology and innovation and business development based upon wood pulp, based upon cotton, based upon hydrocarbon-based plastics, fossil fuel-based plastics, etc. And so it will take time to develop those technologies. Those technologies being developed and those businesses being developed are where the opportunities lie. And keep in mind that hemp can be a tool to help address climate change and anthropogenic global warming, if you believe in it. Even if you don't believe in anthropogenic global warming, the hemp plant, which can be used for plastics and more, will pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere more effectively than trees do even, turn it into pulp, plastics, and fiber, which then will end up being sequestered in the soil, which is essentially creating the largest carbon negative industry the Earth has ever seen. And whether you believe in what I said, anthropogenic global warming or not, the idea of taking carbon dioxide that's been put in the atmosphere from the use of fossil fuels is only a positive. It's going to reduce the overall carbon dioxide emission issue in a dramatic way as we switch to a hemp-based economy and hemp-based economies, which is already happening.
Leslie,
yes, go ahead.
I need to interrupt you and let you know that you've got 5 minutes before our next guest is going to be presenting.
So why don't I just tie it up and then we can go to some questions?
Absolutely, please.
Great. So, and it's funny because I was just getting to the last things I was going to say. And so the answer is, what should we be doing as investors? What should we be doing as operators? How can we make good decisions? What do we need to do to navigate this? And the answer is going to be the same for both of those questions, as investors and operators or more. We need to focus on working with people who know the markets. We need to focus on regulatory knowledge, domain business issue knowledge, and doing due diligence. We need to be very aware of the froth that is coming. Alan Greenspan once described what happened with the internet as irrational exuberance. We've already seen a little bit of that with the cannabis industry, and we're going to see it again. Please avoid getting caught up in it. Be patient, be diligent, be focused. Patience is power. Take your time, do the due diligence, and very important, make sure the people you're working with are quality, you know who they are, and that they are great at what they do. There will be many people coming into this industry, and there already are to these industries, that don't have knowledge, that are being attracted by the fast money and the gold rush mentality. Be very careful to avoid them and make sure you're working with people who are going to be what you want to be associated with and who you want to work with. And so with that, let me just say once again, thank you so much for this opportunity to share my perspective. And are there any questions that I can answer?
Yes, I would like to let you know that our guest would like to know what your thoughts are about the election results, the impact it's going to have on, I think it's NQD. I guess I could put my glasses on and read this. INQD as a company, cannabis industry and the cannabis industry in general. And basically some of your thoughts about the states that recently voted cannabis legal. So that's kind of like a great big one.
I'll start with that. So for full disclosure, I'm the CEO of a public company called Indoor Harvest. The symbol is INQD. It's on the bulletin board. I am going to avoid speaking about that because of public company issues. Let me just say I'm very excited about what I'm doing there, and and we'll keep it at that. The opportunities that are there are going to be what we see for the industry at large, which is enormous. What does the current administration represent? This administration has, apparently, this incoming administration has a perspective on this industry that is stated decriminalization and to go further than just letting states do business the way they do it, and that is to adopt a national policy. What that means, and it's gigantic in its importance, is when we see national policy established that removes cannabis from the Schedule 1 and it is no longer federally illegal, the amount of capital that's going to flow into the U.S. markets, the public markets in particular, is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen in any industry before. Because candidly, the cannabis and hemp industries are going to be two of the industries that pull the global economy out of the current pandemic-influenced malaise. And so the growth and profitability we're going to see from that will be extraordinary. And so that's my statement. The current administration's policies are established, and they have been very integrated with the industry to work with them on getting advice and making good decisions about it.
Thank you so very much. Okay, well, I think that is a wrap in a nutshell.
Can I say one more question? I just want to say one thing, Jessica. If anybody has any questions for me, please, you can reach out to me through Twitter. You can reach out to me through the electrumpartners.com website, www.electrumpartners.com. I'm Leslie Bocskor on Twitter, LESLIEBOCSKOR. You can find me through direct message on there. I am, and I'm happy to answer questions that are about the industry and things like that and make myself available. Obviously, once again, stating as being involved in a public company, I have to be very aware of the rules and regulations regarding that, so I won't speak about specifics. But anything else, I'm happy to be engaged and provide value to anybody in the audience or anybody that sees this afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Leslie. It's always just so wonderful to have you with us. You have so much information to share, and we are really, really, really grateful and appreciative for being our source for guidance. Thank you.